Maxx Crosby wants out of Las Vegas. Nate, what's up? This is Technically Correct with Tyler Bischoff, and on today's show, is Maxx Crosby actually going to get traded by the Raiders? Plus, I've got a very specific deep dive into Clint Kubiak, the Raiders' next head coach, and did the Kings just one-up the Golden Knights in the Pacific Division? Now that the Raiders have their head coach, kind of, and we know who they're going to take with the first overall pick, probably, the biggest storyline for the Raiders is going to be what happens to Maxx Crosby. He has been the best player on this team for years. He has never wanted to leave the Raiders, but this organization has absolutely sucked since he's been here. And he got benched for the last 2 games of the season, something that he was reportedly not very happy about. It's possible he gets traded. John Spytek, the Raiders general manager, was asked about it at the end of the season, and he was non-committal. He evaded the question about trading Maxx Crosby. Well, yesterday, Jay Glazer talked to Yahoo Sports, and he said that Maxx Crosby is done with the Raiders, and he expects Crosby to be traded before the NFL draft. This is exactly what the Raiders should do. The organization is rebuilding. Maxx Crosby is going to be 29 years old when next season begins. Crosby, in reality, probably has 2 years left of his prime. If he's really good, stays healthy, there might be more than 2 years. But the reality is you get over 30 and you're not as productive in the NFL at pretty much every position except a handful of quarterbacks and kicker. Crosby's not going to be one of the top 5 edge rushers in the NFL 3 years from now. That's just the reality of aging and the reality of the sport. Crosby's timeline is the next 2 years. When do the Raiders think they're going to be good? Probably not the next 2 years, right? The Raiders' timeline is going to be Fernando Mendoza's 3rd, 4th, 5th year. Those are going to be the big years to cash in. So trading away Maxx Crosby to get picks, to get younger and cheaper assets that will match the timeline of Fernando Mendoza should be a no-brainer for the Raiders. And this organization that has tripped over itself time and time again made the right call in December to actively tank. Sitting Maxx Crosby was a big part of that. Then went the right route by hiring Clint Kubiak, an offensive-minded head coach. We'll see if he's any good, but it's the right idea, the right type of coach to hire. It's like back-to-back competent months from the Raiders organization. They haven't done that very often. And if they trade away Maxx Crosby before the draft, February, March, or into April, right, we would be looking at a run of competency that this organization hasn't seen in a long time. That's what they should be doing. Now, Jay Glazer, when he was on with Yahoo, he sounded like he was Maxx Crosby's agent in the way he was talking about this. Like, he alluding to Crosby sitting out those last 2 games of the season because the Raiders made him. He was injured. He needed to have surgery. But Crosby, again, had that team been in playoff contention, Crosby probably plays those last 2 games. But Jay Glazer, the way he phrased it was, there are certain players you don't tell to sit. If they're playing, they're playing. Like trying to sound like some sort of mob boss that they wronged Maxx Crosby by making him sit these last 2 games and completely ruin that relationship. Some sort of weird threatening vibe from Jay Glazer talking about Maxx Crosby. He also said that trading Crosby before the draft is a Maxx Crosby decision and not a Raiders decision to trade him. I mean, the Raiders have got to be considering trading him, even if Crosby doesn't ask for it or was completely happy with everything. You have to consider trading the 29-year-old star player who's probably not going to be good when you're good. If the Raiders haven't considered it, regardless of Crosby's attitude or mindset, that's just a bad organization. And then, this is the part that really stuck out to me. Jay Glazer was asked what kind of return could the Raiders get for Crosby. And Glazer said more than what the Cowboys got for Micah Parsons. So the Cowboys traded Micah Parsons for 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark. They got 2 picks in the first round and a starting-level defensive tackle. Clark's a little older, so the the long-term upside isn't there. I don't think the Raiders should trade away Crosby and get in return a player like Kenny Clark. If they get any sort of player, it should be a younger player, right? But 2 first-round picks and then one other asset, that's kind of the max that defensive players get traded for. We saw Sauce Gardner in season get traded to the Colts, and it was 2 first-round picks and Adonai Mitchell, a young wide receiver who hadn't really done much with the Colts. That's kind of the max. But here's the problem. Crosby is older than both Sauce Gardner and Micah Parsons. And Parsons is the better comparison. They play the same position. Parsons is 2 years younger than Maxx Crosby. And Crosby is coming off of back-to-back years where he has been injured, right? I know he didn't want to sit, and he probably could have played through it, but he played 12 games last year and 15 games in this most recent season, right? It's 27 games over the last 2 years for Maxx Crosby. 29-year-old coming off back-to-back seasons where he's injured is not the highest priced defensive player. I would be shocked if the Raiders got more than 2 first-round picks and a Kenny Clark level player for Maxx Crosby. In fact, if that asset, if that trade package is available, the Raiders should have traded Maxx Crosby already. He should not be a Raider anymore. That should be an immediate accept if you're the Raiders, because I don't think you're getting that package. If another team offers that, frankly, they're idiots. I mean, they're morons to do that for a 29-year-old player who you might have, again, at his peak for 2 more seasons. If I had to guess, Raiders trade Crosby, it's going to be 1 first-round pick and then a second-round pick. Those will be the main pieces, and then like a 4th-round pick or a player like Adonai Mitchell, right? The Raiders could use a wide receiver, but here's a wide receiver who was drafted pretty high but hasn't really done much with his current team. That would be my guess as to what sort of package they would get. A first, a second, and then something else that carries a little bit of value. I don't think they're getting 2 first and more than Kenny Clark. That would be absurd. 3 first-round picks would be insane. 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick would be pretty wild. So we'll see if they actually trade him, but what the package is probably going to be less than Micah Parsons, because Maxx Crosby is not as valuable of an asset right now as Micah Parsons. Now, one thing specifically on Clint Kubiak, who's going to be the Raiders' next head coach. I was looking up some numbers for some prop bets for the Super Bowl. I love to just go, I don't bet a whole lot, but I do on the Super Bowl love to do prop bets. We're going to have a fun show tomorrow with some prop bets. Stay tuned for that. Everybody's favorite person will be by for a few minutes on tomorrow's show. But when looking this up, I found that both the Patriots and the Seahawks were really, really good in the first quarter. So looking at EPA per play, expected points added, it's an advanced stat, but New England was the best offense in the league in the first quarter by EPA per play. Seattle was 6th, right? And so looking at the Seahawks and looking at Clint Kubiak's offense, they were 6th in offensive EPA per play in the first quarter of all games this season. In the second quarter, they were 20th. In the third quarter, they were 15th. And in the fourth quarter, they were 25th. It's a huge drop-off, right? If you ignored that first quarter and I told you, hey, the Raiders just hired a coach whose EPA says they have the 20th, 15th, and 25th best offense in the league, you'd be like, well, that's a terrible hire. Why would we hire an offensive coordinator who doesn't even have a top half offense? Right. First quarters have been really good for Seattle. So my first thought on this was, is Clint Kubiak really, really good at the whole opening script, the first drive, when you get to script out your 15 plays and practice those all week, and those are your best plays for the game? Is he really good at the opening drive and then struggles everywhere else? So he's been an offensive coordinator at 3 different places this year in Seattle, but last year he was in New Orleans, and the Saints offense was not as good as Seattle's this year. But first quarter in New Orleans, their EPA was 15th best in the league. Second quarter, 17th. Third quarter, 25th. Fourth quarter, 30th. Another big drop-off, right? More or less first half to second half with New Orleans, but still got worse every single quarter. And then if you go back to 2021, when he was the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, first quarter EPA per play, 6th best in the league. Second quarter, 22nd. third quarter 20th, and fourth quarter 16th. Again, huge drop-off from a good first quarter offense to all of a sudden, you're not even in the top half of the league in the last 3 quarters of the game. So is this all about opening drives? I went through and found every opening drive that he has been the offensive coordinator of for Seattle, for New Orleans, and for Minnesota. And it's 53 total drives, by the way, which includes the playoffs this year in Seattle. The only time he's been in the playoffs as a coordinator. 53 total drives. So some numbers here. 3 total turnovers on those drives. 53 drives, only 3 times has his offense turned the ball over. That's a big stat right there because EPA per play, turnovers are a huge negative. So if you don't turn the ball over, your EPA per play is going to at least stay average quite a bit. If you look, his turnover rate for all drives, all of his offenses is about 12%. On his opening drives, it's 5.6%. So the amount of turnovers is cut more than in half on the opening drives by Clint Kubiak's offense. If you look at yards per play, this season, it goes from 6 to 5.8, 6 on the opening drive, 5.8 for the entirety of the season. Not a huge difference there, just a tad bit better in yards per play. In New Orleans and Minnesota, though, his opening drives were about half a yard per play better than all of the other drives they had. Half a yard significant because that's usually the difference between the best offense in the league and the league average. So half a yard per play is significant. And if you look at points on opening drive, Kubiak's teams have scored on 45% of their opening drives. The rest of his team's drives are about 38%. So a decent jump there, right? It wasn't as big of an outlier as I was expecting. I thought those numbers were going to be more significant, the first drives being better than the rest of the game. But the biggest thing is those turnovers because they just have not happened at any of his 3 stops, right? Seattle specifically this year, we're going to the Super Bowl, right? They're the favorites in the Super Bowl. They had the second most turnovers in the league. They had 28 turnovers this season. Only one of those came on the opening drive, right? New Orleans and Minnesota, they didn't have as many turnovers at New Orleans and Minnesota, surprisingly. Like the worst offense he's coached, or the best offense he's coached, had the most turnovers. But his turnover rates were still lower on the first drive there than they were the rest of the games as well. So is Kubiak only successful on the opening drives? No, but he is certainly good, better than the rest of the game. I do wonder, specifically on the turnovers, like from a quarterback standpoint, is it easier to grasp the offense when it's the scripted plays and everything, and then later in the game it's a little bit harder, right? I don't know. I don't have any idea. It's not fair to say Kubiak is just a really good opening script type of coach, and then everything else he's average at, but it is something that I'll be paying attention to. How good does Mendoza look on the first drive, right? Raiders are going to get the ball to start the first game next year. They're going to win the toss. They're going to take the ball. We want Mendoza on the field. They're going to march down the field and score. And it's going to be, oh my God, they're going to win the Super Bowl in 5 years, right? We'll see, but that'll be something to watch this season under Clint Kubiak because he has been pretty good at it so far in his career. But Kubiak, good on opening drives, but he probably won't have Maxx Crosby on defense for the opposing offense's opening drive.
Battle Blast, been serving Las Vegas since June 2012 with the very best in family entertainment. We are proud to provide the best facility, equipment, and service possible. Strap on laser tag vests, step into the 5,600 square foot 2-story arena designed to look like a worn, torn city street. An exciting atmosphere filled with exhilarating music, blacklight effects, and fog. Battle Blast also features a viewing deck for those not playing can watch players vest up and catch a view of the action going on in the arena. In between games, check out our arcade and prize center and enjoy tasty treats from our snack bar. Birthday parties, sports teams, group outings, and corporate events. Battle Blast does it all. We want to make your Battle Blast experience so good you'll want to return again and again. Battle Blast is the ultimate destination for family fun and friendly competition.
Bischoff's Briefs is brought to you by Battle Blast Las Vegas, the best laser tag in Vegas. It's the perfect spot for your next event, whether it's your kid's birthday party, your birthday party, a corporate event, whatever it is. Get your friends, your family, your coworkers together and head out to Battle Blast Las Vegas to see who's best at laser tag. It's Battle Blast Las Vegas, located at 8125 West Sahara Avenue, your next stop for fun in Las Vegas. UNLV football is doing giveaways for season ticket holders this year. I got a question for you guys that I hope that you'll answer somewhere. Tweet me, email me, something like that. But UNLV football is doing some giveaways here. If you have season tickets, if you've renewed, if you just got them, I assume they're going to do it if you buy them now. But they're going to give away things like $150 worth of merchandise, a suite upgrade, a lodge upgrade. They're going to have field passes. They're going to have stuff signed by Dan Mullen. Like they're going to give these things away, apparently random drawing, to season ticket holders. But my question is, for people that have UNLV season tickets, is it worth it? Like, do you get perks, good perks, and do you think the price is good for the value of going to watch UNLV football play? It's not, I'll be honest, like I haven't paid very much attention to what season ticket holders get in the past and everything for UNLV football, but I'm curious sort of how you guys feel given that the program wasn't good 4 years ago, right? Like being a UNLV season ticket holder until these last couple of years was like, oh, I almost feel sorry for you. But like, I'm just curious how you feel about the value of it. And also like, is it better than just buying single game tickets and all of that? Just curious what you guys think that have had UNLV football season tickets given the drastic change that they've had as a program. Also, speaking of tickets, this one is actually pretty exciting. It doesn't help us because it's the A's and they're in Sacramento right now. But the A's put single game tickets on sale this week for their games in Sacramento. And the A's have tickets as low as $8 for some of their games. Now, if you want to go to their opening home game, you're not getting an $8 ticket for that. But their second series is against the Texas Rangers. I was looking at a Monday night game against the Rangers in April. They got $8 tickets down the left field line in the last few sections. There's $8 tickets. Behind home plate, $60. Behind the dugout, $37. Like, these are genuinely affordable tickets that the A's are selling. The A's averaged less than 10,000 fans last season in Sacramento. Maybe this will help. I'll be honest, I don't know what you had to pay last year to get tickets to these games, but $8 for a ticket to a sporting event is like an unheard of, right? Like that's remarkable. I'm guessing if you go to high school sporting events, you got to pay more than $8 to get in. I won't get my hopes up for when the A's move to Vegas that we're going to have cheap tickets here. I'm expecting them to be very, very pricey because they're building the smallest by capacity. They're building the smallest ballpark in Major League Baseball, and they're planning to have more suites or premium seats, which are expensive. So I'm guessing it's not going to be very cheap to go to A's games, at least when they first move here. My hope is that after they've been here for a while, it becomes Major League Baseball, and it's like, oh, yeah, you don't sell out games in the middle of the summer on a Wednesday, especially ones that start at like noon. And so they'll be really cheap tickets, at least on the secondary market. Hopefully that happens in year one, because I'd like to just go to random baseball games in the middle of the day. That'd be fun. But shout out to the A's for $8 tickets. I actually think that's really, really cool. Nathaniel Hackett is going to be the offensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals. Again, what are the Arizona Cardinals doing? I guess if LaFleur is going to call plays, it doesn't matter that much. I kind of hope it means Aaron Rodgers goes and plays for the Cardinals. That would be interesting. But I do think the Cardinals are one of the more fascinating teams in terms of what do they decide to do at quarterback, because they have Kyler Murray, and I think Kyler Murray's been a quarterback in the NFL long enough for us to say it's never going to be, it's not going to work where Kyler Murray takes you to the Super Bowl, right? The right offensive environment, you can be a playoff team, but I don't think Super Bowl's happening unless the team is just stacked around it, right? So what are you doing if you're the Cardinals with Kyler Murray? Are you moving on from him? You're not in a position to really upgrade though. That's the issue, and why it was so important for the Raiders to get the number one pick in the draft. Because if the Raiders hadn't gotten the number one pick in the draft, we'd be talking about this team as like, well, can they really upgrade from Geno Smith? So that's kind of where the Cardinals are. And I just wonder what they do with Kyler Murray. And like, is there a team out there that would say, all right, we can't really upgrade because there's not great quarterbacks in the draft, but I'm thinking like the Steelers, maybe if Rodgers doesn't go back to Pittsburgh or retires or whatever, would the Steelers be like, we'll take a shot on Kyler Murray, bring him in? I don't know. It seems like a quarterback that is, it's kind of the rough part of the NFL. Kyler Murray is one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL. It's not even really a question, but you don't want like the 20th best quarterback in the NFL. You just don't. So what do you do with Kyler Murray, and does anybody want him? I hope he's a starter somewhere next year because he's really, really fun to watch. And I hope we don't get the Jameis Winston treatment where everybody's like, yeah, we're just going to make him a backup. It's like, no. The NFL is better when Jameis Winston is playing every weekend. Not everybody needs to be going for the rookie quarterback. Give us the Jameses and the Kyler Murrays running around there, making the sport fun. One more for you. You're gonna hear too much of this from me in the summer, but soccer is the third most popular sport in America. So an outlet called The Economist asked people what their favorite sport is. And the numbers in the United States, the numbers were football, obviously at number one. 36% of people said football was their favorite sport. Then basketball was number two at 17%. So football is more than double the second sport in terms of popularity. And then soccer was third at 10%. Baseball came in fourth at 9%, and then hockey was all the way down at 4%. Tennis, MMA, golf all got either 2 or 3%. So hockey's closer to tennis and golf than it is to baseball and soccer, right? Like, we talk about the big four in this country. Hockey, in terms of what's your favorite sport, is kind of slipping behind. Now, big four leagues, yes, hockey is still there, because when people say soccer is their favorite sport, like, I'm a soccer fan, my favorite soccer team plays in a different country, right? So most of the people in this country who say soccer is their favorite sport are not actually cheering for a soccer team in the United States. They're cheering for a team either in Mexico, because Liga MX is big, or you're like me and you're just cheering for teams that are in Europe instead. But like, part of the flaw with this poll, by the way, is like, they only asked what's your favorite sport. And so, like, for me, for example, that'd be tough to answer, because I feel like my favorite sport changes on a regular basis, because I like all the sports. Like, I love soccer. Soccer's one of the most enthralling sports to watch, one of the most dramatic sports to watch. But is it my favorite? I think basketball is probably my, like, most aesthetically pleasing sport to watch. I don't know. Like, and sometimes football is, because football is the best strategy game that we have. And in the United States, we actually have lots of sports that lots of people care about, whereas in other countries, it's like, yeah, we all care about soccer, and then maybe a little bit about cricket or darts, right? So it's a weird way to phrase it with, hey, what's your favorite sport? Because for a lot of people, they might say, well, football's my favorite sport, but hockey's my second favorite. I like hockey, but you don't get to answer hockey on this one. So it's always fascinating sort of where sports line up in this country, given how popular football has gotten and where other sports kind of fall in line. But Bischoff's Briefs is brought to you by Battle Blast Las Vegas, the best laser tag in Las Vegas. A big thank you to Battle Blast Las Vegas for sponsoring the show. It means a lot to me to have a sponsor. It means a lot for me to be able to do this. So a shout out to Battle Blast Las Vegas. Make sure you check them out. 8125 West Sahara Avenue. Battle Blast Las Vegas, your next stop for fun in Vegas. The Golden Knights snapped their 5-game losing streak last night. Playing the worst team in the West came at the right time, because the Vancouver Canucks are not very good. They're last in the West. I don't want the big main narrative to just simply be Vancouver sucks. They're not good, but I don't think that's ultimately the most important thing from last night's game. However, the Golden Knights have won 5 straight against Vancouver, won all 4 matchups last year, and now this one. It's the second longest active winning streak the Golden Knights have over one opponent. They've beaten San Jose 11 straight times, so they got a ways to go on that one. But they're dominating against Vancouver, who's at the bottom of the standings as well. But the part of this game that I found the most interesting were the decisions Bruce Cassidy was making. You know, I've been obsessing over the lines and the zone starts because the Golden Knights don't have enough centers, and Cassidy's having to sort of figure things out on the fly and put guys into positions they're not used to playing. Literal positions, but also where on the ice and what types of matchups and starts they get. So the Golden Knights started this game very similar to how they have recently, right? They give Mitch Marner, who's playing out of position at center, give him the best wingers. He had Stone and Pavel Dorofeyev as his wingers. They're making Tomas Hertl play in the third line with the leftover wingers, right? It was Riley Smith and Keegan Kolesar to start the game. And then Jack Eichel keeps Ivan Barbashev, but then they're just sort of trying a different guy up there. It was Holtz to start this game. That was your first period. I'm not going to sit here and say they played poorly, but they didn't play well. It was kind of a bland first period. The total shots on goal between both teams in the first period at 5-on-5 was 9. So nothing really happened in the first period, which is better than most of their first periods. Usually they're behind 2-0 by the end of the first period, but nothing really happened. So Cassidy changed the lines. And in the second period, and then throughout the rest of the game, the second period, he put back together his top line, right? The top line of this team, if they were fully healthy, is Barbashev, Eichel, and Stone. It's those three. He put them back together, and they scored almost immediately, and they dominated the entire game. I think Vancouver ended with 0 scoring chances against that line. It was like 7-0 was the final scoring chance numbers against Eichel with Stone and Barbashev. That top line was completely dominant. Mitch Marner still got a good pairing with his wingers relative to the rest of the lineup, right? Dorofeyev stayed there, and then Riley Smith moved on to his line. And then Tomas Hertl stayed in the same role, where it was, hey, you're on the third line, you get who's ever left over, but it's not a fourth liner. And it was Holtz and in this case, Keegan Kolesar. And what Cassidy did from the second and third periods, pretty much the entire game, it kind of was over there at the end. It didn't matter too much, but Tomas Hertl did not get offensive zone faceoffs. Hertl did not have a single offensive zone faceoff this entire game. 20 of the 26 defensive zone faceoffs were taken by Jack Eichel and Tomas Hertl's lines, right? Marner took 5 and Uchas took 1 in his NHL debut. There were a lot of faceoffs in this. There's usually not that many. There's usually not 26 defensive zone faceoffs. There were a lot in this game. But basically, talked about this before, but with Marner at center, Cassidy doesn't want Marner taking a lot of defensive zone faceoffs. He takes some. He took 5 in this game, but again, there were a ton. And then whoever that other center is, this time it's Uchas making his NHL debut. Cassidy has shied away from that player taking defensive zone faceoffs as well, right? It was Uchas. It's been Tanner Lisinski. Riley Smith has played some center as well. He's avoided that, which means there's only really 2 guys that he has taking these defensive zone faceoffs, Eichel and right now, Tomas Hertl. And so what it meant for Tomas Hertl is he gets this crappy role again. And the Golden Knights were bad with Tomas Hertl on the ice yet again, right? Since Colton Sissons has been out and Mitch Marner's been playing center, the Golden Knights have been outscored 9-4 with Tomas Hertl on the ice at 5-on-5. And the expected goals, it's roughly like 47% now. It's bad, right? It has not been good for the Golden Knights. And last night, the player with the worst Corsi, the worst expected goals rate was Tomas Hertl, at least for the Golden Knights, was Tomas Hertl, right? They were bad with Hertl on the ice. They did score a goal. Every single line did score in the second and third period, but that was their worst line, was what Tomas Hertl was. So I guess it worked against Vancouver, right? Worst team in the West. It worked. But I guess the question is, how sustainable is it to take Tomas Hertl and put him in what's essentially the William Karlsson role, right? You're the third line center. You take a bunch of defensive zone faceoffs. You're asked to defend a lot, and we don't give you good wingers, right? For a while there, William Karlsson, before he got hurt, if a winger was struggling, you just put him with William Karlsson and said, all right, go play with Karlsson. Maybe you'll figure it out there. But that's kind of what Tomas Hertl's role is right now. And overall, it's not working. They're getting beat when he's on the ice. I would say if Stone, Eichel, and Barbashev are going to be as awesome as they were last night, that might balance it out, right? And then it comes down to, does the Marner line win? Does the fourth line win or maybe just not lose, right? Like that might balance it out if you get this awesome first line and Hertl's third line is going to get beat, but it's outweighed by how good Eichel is up there. Again, it worked against Vancouver. It had not been working in the past with Marner at center and Hertl taking all of these defensive zone faceoffs in a, bad role. So this is what I'm curious to see. There's only one game tonight against LA before the Olympic break, and then we're not going to see this team play for what is it, like 20 days, 17 days, I think it is. So it'll be a while before we see it again. But this is sort of what Cassidy is having to figure out on the fly and what works best. I don't think there's a good, I think the problem is I don't know that there's a right answer. I don't think making Tomas Hertl, who's an offensive center, take all these defensive zone faceoffs, play with bad wingers. I don't think that's a good answer, but it's probably the best choice right now for Bruce Cassidy. So I just don't know if this is a right answer, a good answer for Cassidy with his current lineup. They're still good enough to beat Vancouver, but they've been struggling quite a bit. Now, before the game, we did get an injury update, an actual injury update or timeline from Bruce Cassidy. He was asked about, like, after the Olympic break, guys coming back from injuries, like, what does that look like? And the real update with Braden McNabb, Bruce Cassidy said that they expect Braden McNabb to be back right after the Olympic break. That's a real timeline. We don't usually get those for the Golden Knights. So Golden Knights play on the 25th of February against the Kings, I should say, after the Olympic break. So that's when we should expect to see Braden McNabb playing. And the exciting part of that is seeing how the Golden Knights handle their defensive pairs, right? Theodore and McNabb, in theory, we assume, are going to be the top pair. And then Hannafin and Anderson have been playing together since Rasmus Anderson got traded here. Would assume they're your second pair. But how much does Cassidy experiment with moving Anderson down to the third pair to give yourself what should be a good puck-moving defenseman on all three pairs? That's what I'm curious to see, because I am assuming at some point in the playoffs, they're going to be mixing that up and trying out, hey, do we just load up our top two, or do we go for more balance with our pairs? We'll finally get to see them experiment, in theory, with that. However, Cassidy talked about the other injured players and gave the vaguest updates possible, right? Carlson will stay week to week, is what Bruce Cassidy said. Carlson has been week to week, and he's actually been out for multiple months now. We're way past week to week, but they keep saying week to week. So that could mean actual week, or his season is over, and the Golden Knights just don't want to say it. He also kind of said Howden was also week to week. He didn't exactly say that. He just kind of said Howden too. So I guess Carlson and Howden, not expecting them to come back anytime soon. And then he said Brandon Saad and Colton Sissons were closer than Carlson and Howden. So whatever. That doesn't mean anything. And Carter Hart, he said, is a tough one. Got to see him on the ice first, which is valid. But that was the update on Carter Hart, was just, it's a tough one. So we got an injury update on Braden McNabb, but the rest of it, no. The last thing I want to talk about here is the Pacific Division and the LA Kings, because the LA Kings traded for Artemi Panarin, who is very good. They only had to give him a third-round pick and a prospect for him. Apparently a good prospect, but only a third-round pick and a prospect for a player who, 19 goals in 52 games, I believe it is, right? I know he missed some time there, but is probably going to score 30 goals in the season. So Panarin is 34. He's in the final year of his contract, or was in the final year of his contract. He signed a 2-year extension with LA after getting traded there, getting $11 million per year. I'll get to that extension part here. But he's still very good right now. And the question I have is, like, how much of a difference does Artemi Panarin make for the LA Kings? Because the Pacific Division is tight, right? It is a tight division, from the Golden Knights in first down to teams that are on the outside looking in, right? LA, Seattle battling for the last wild card spot. Hell, it could be Edmonton, Anaheim, or if the Golden Knights lose 5 more in a row, like, any of these teams could fall back and all of a sudden you're fighting for your playoff lives. So is Artemi Panarin worth 3 points the rest of the season? Because if he's worth 3 points the rest of the season, that might be the difference between getting in and being left out of the playoffs. It might be the difference between getting the 2 and the 3, who gets home ice in the first round of the playoffs. There's a chance it's even the difference between first and second in the Pacific Division. So, like, 3 points could be massive in the standings, and that might be how much better Artemi Panarin makes LA. Now, on the actual trade, it's a third-round pick and a prospect, and the Rangers retained 50% of the salary. The trade was very good from that perspective. You didn't give up really anything, right? And you didn't even have to pay his full salary, or this doesn't count against the cap the rest of the way. So, like, the value of that is good. The part that I have a question on is the extension. Panarin is 34 years old. Yes, he's good now, but you sign him to 2 more years at 11 million per season, right? So would you want to pay a guy for his 35th and 36th year $11 million? Not really. I know Dom Lucian tweeted out that the extension actually looks like it's going to be pretty good because his sort of projections on the aging curve with Panarin, he's going to get worse, but not significantly worse. So if Dom's model is right, they're not going to regret this. But it does feel like yikes, that got bad in a hurry, which happens in sports all the time for guys in their mid-30s. That's the part of it that I would not have wanted to do. Trade for Panarin and then, I've got to extend him and pay him $11 million over the next 2 seasons. 2 years isn't too bad, right? You'll be out of that relatively quickly if it does go south, especially if you get this year and then the next season. If he's good for a year and a half, then that last year's bad. All right, you kind of have to eat that one. That's fine. So the extension part, though, not terrible, but I don't think I would have wanted to do it if I were the LA Kings. But the Kings, as far as the Golden Knights are concerned, are better now. Unfortunately, I guess Panarin's not playing tonight. He's not making his debut for the Kings against the Golden Knights. That would have been fun to see. However, the first game after the Olympic break is against the Kings. So if Panarin, assuming he's healthy and plays in that game, will still make his debut against the Golden Knights, it'll just be 20 days from now and not tonight. So that's a bit unfortunate. But this has been Technically Correct. I'm Tyler Bischoff. Thank you for tuning in.